Do you any guys want to swim?
Oh yeah.
No, I've never been
Let's head into Nightlands Cove. Thanks, Mitch.
there. Thank you so much for bringing this up.
Well,
Any scallops or win?
yeah, I think we did okay.
How do octopus copulate?
You'd be a skeet if you came out of mermaid's
Yeah,
face.
if I were in a mermaid's face, but it'd just be.
I punched a sculpin once.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on?
What?
Why are we on this stage?
And you get me.
It's got a whole lot less PG since Liam arrived.
I'm alright. You've
The,
seen my
uh,
downstairs mix.
Right on. Here we are.
Here we are. Cool,
Hey, Rob.
So what did you guys want to ask me?
Why are we on this stage?
I guess we should start with some introductions for the dozens of people that are going to see this, the fives, maybe the twos of people who are going to see this. Jill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jill Taylor, and I am a marine scientist and videographer.
Brad?
Did you want more than that?
No, that's great. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Cool.
So I am a mainlander, but I have a soft spot for the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, you were like, judging by all the stories, you've had like a long relationship with the ocean from childhood.
Yeah. Basically grew up building sandcastles for hermit crabs and a lot of time in the ocean, boogie boarding and just playing around and yeah. But it wasn't until university that I really decided that I was like, oh, I want to study this. There's some cool science going on here.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. More on that later. Tanner?
Cool.
What about yourself?
My name's
Where you belongs
Tanner. What was that?
Where you belongs to?
My name's Tanner Stein. I'm a high school science teacher currently. Also a very avid ocean enthusiast. I grew up in Gagetown or Muckdo in New Brunswick. But I've been in Newfoundland now for almost 12 years. It's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So,
Wicked.
yeah, this place is feeling more like home. Yeah, the ocean was a love from the start for me. I grew up reading every shark book, fish book I could get my hands on, anything to do with the ocean. And then did my honors and most of my undergrad related to the ocean. And yeah, eventually finally got into scuba diving, and here we are.
Wicked.
Yeah.
She got you into scuba diving a little bit, hey?
Yeah,
I
it was always a dream. And then I got into kind of snorkeling for my undergrad. I've been my honors in Norris Point. But then you came along, and I was like, oh, maybe I will get into this diving
I
thing.
need to try to impress her.
It worked. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
No, one of the first times we hung out, just the two of us, we went for a snorkel out in Harbour, Maine.
Yeah.
And I saw my first winter skate. I've never seen one in Nova Scotia, which is where I learned how to dive. And it was a really cold June day. And we went in and we saw one probably like 5 feet offshore. It was really cool.
Cool.
Mhm.
Winter skate?
Winter skate, yeah. So
Yeah.
sharks, skates, and rays, they're all related. They basically look like stingrays, but they don't sting.
Yeah. A flat shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, it looked like, so I saw one in one of your videos. It kind of looked like a stingray sort of thing.
Yeah.
Across the flounder. I don't know.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's a
very cool.
good way to
Without the
describe
stinger.
So
No.
what's the fascination with them?
it. They're just not something I'd ever seen before in the wild, so that was cool. And they reproduce with these really cool mermaid purses, is what they're called. They're this black pouch, which is like two sides off the ends.
Yeah.
And basically a tiny little mini skate emerges from that when it's ready to come out. And we see mermaids' purses all the time.
Oh, neat.
So it's cool to kind of piece that together.
Yeah.
And they have their mouths on the bottom of their bodies. And we saw one actually scuba diving a couple weeks ago, just munching on a cod that was dead at the bottom.
Oh, sick.
It was really
Mhm.
cool. I've never seen one feed before. And so it
No.
was just this like
They're
pancake
usually-
devouring a cod.
Usually they're hiding, so they'll bury themselves in sand and have these
Yeah.
little spiracles where they breathe out of, almost like kind of gill openings.
Yeah.
on the top of their head, and they're cycling water that way. They can also get really big. Like some of the smallest ones we've seen were about the size of that coffee table, and they can get up to, I'm assuming, like a meter across. Like we've seen some pretty big
bigger,
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people probably seen the mermaid's purses
Washed up
on shore. They're on beaches all the time.
Okay, so is it something that comes off? Or like,
So they're really fun in that they'll basically lay these mermaid purses.
oh, it's like a
It's a sack.
sack, yeah.
Yeah,
But like
it's
a harder
exactly.
shell.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
They kind of look like lasagna noodles in a way, like dried. I think they look like
Yeah.
pasta noodles, and the way they lay them is they'll get them caught up in like seaweed and stuff. And
So they
then-
don't float away and
yeah.
they attach, and then when they're ready to emerge from, like a little chick emerging from its eggshell, they'll just bust through. But they're fully formed inside when they come out, which is cool.
Wicked. It's so foreign. It's so alien. Like, I
Very
think
much so.
Yeah.
I think the work that you do. So we didn't mention that you have like an awesome and huge Instagram page. So congrats on that. That's like
Thank you.
it's wicked. That's how I was like, man, I got to talk to this lady. And thanks for coming. But I think like pages like yours and the work that you do is so important because we live in a world where we're really cut off from what's out there. We live in a very human world. Like everything around us are these like straight lines and geometric structures that we create, and all the food we get comes in packages. And we don't we can't even envision the animal that we're eating or the field or the environment in which the plants we eat come from. So exposure to such a foreign world in the ocean is so alien. Like it's out of this world. It's very, very cool. It feels like you can go into some sort of fantasy or sci-fi universe just by putting your head underwater.
That's exactly how it feels. Yeah. And you see all these foreign, alien, like you said, species, and they're really funky colors and shapes and sizes. And yeah, you are really entering a different world, and you're entering into this ecosystem that a lot of people don't get to explore. And it's really cool to be able to see that firsthand. It's very calming to be under the water, and there's no sounds except your own breathing while you're scuba diving, and these bubbles trailing past your ears. But it is really cool to be able to explore this. And I think too what you said about the food, we are so removed from the food that we eat, and so much of Newfoundland, specifically any coastal region, historically and culturally relies so much on the ocean for food and sustenance. And yeah, it's cool to be able to connect with that in another way.
We also have a very timid relationship with the ocean, despite it being it's the giver, but it also takes.
Absolutely.
And so like saying earlier how like all my uncles were fishermen, but none of them could swim. And I grew up with a healthy fear of the ocean. And it is interesting how like Newfoundland in particular, it's very uncommon to see people who habitually have a wetsuit and go diving for scallops like we did today. There is a like handfuls of people who do it, and there's definitely a culture of diving here, but it's not like a traditional culture. In other places, it's like so much surfing and diving and whatnot and snorkeling, but our waters just seem a little bit, I don't know, more weary or ominous.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have a healthy respect for the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, currents are no joke. Staying safe is important.
How does it compare out here to like other places that you've dove?
Everything.
In environment and vibe.
Yeah, everything is just more extreme. The water is more crystal clear. The cliff sides underwater are deeper. There's just more cooler Arctic species that you don't always get to see. I learned how to dive in Nova Scotia, so there is a lot of crossover between the species you'd see there and here along the Atlantic, East Atlantic, North Atlantic seaboard. But I have been diving in tropical waters around Costa Rica, and yeah, like obviously diving anywhere is really cool and seeing new species is cool, but I would compare the visibility that you get here, like that bright blue Gatorade turquoise water that everyone associates with tropical waters, exists right here. Like you don't have to get on a plane to go see that. It's in our own backyard, which is really special, and not a lot of people can say that. It is cold, but that is the trade-off. But that coldness allows for some really great visibility.
Yeah, cool. I think there's this funny image of us three in the back of Mitch's boat today, just like after being in the water for like an hour or so, just sitting there getting hammered by the waves, just like jackhammering. Smiles on her face, like shitting grins.
Trying to warm up in this sun.
I think it's hard to understand why we would ever put ourselves through that, because so many snorkeling, like you said, when we, like right after we had met and we went snorkeling in June, the water was 2 degrees Celsius. Like,
yeah.
I think I remember that was the coldest water I had ever been at that point, and there was a very distinct feeling of having your face hurt from cold water.
Yeah.
And the ocean, I find, is so unassuming unless you're in it. Like if you're looking at it from shore, from a beach, from a cliff,
Especially
whatever.
on a hot day and you get in there, it's 2 degrees. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like you look at it and you're like, you know, all you see is the surface.
That's right.
You know, sometimes you can kind of see some colors and shapes, you know, through the water in the shallows, but it's something else to get in and to experience that. And yeah.
It really is. It feels like it's a new world that I've stepped into. Like I'm very new to this, but I remember the feeling I got the first day I put on the wetsuit and snorkel, and the same thing, cold water hit my face, and I was like, whoa.
Ouch.
Like I do a lot of cold water exposure stuff, but that was because I was like submersed in it, you know, felt like, and it wasn't just like I'm going in this to feel cold. It was like, oh, this is something I have to deal with while I do something else.
Yeah.
And I remember I was just out here, I got in the water and I was swimming. I was like, I could see the bottom super clear, there's little crabs, and I just got like the heebie-jeebies, like what if these things like reach up and bite me, or what's in that kelp there? And then out of nowhere, like I was like getting really in my own head about it. The kelp was there, like I'm gonna kill you, and and then I kind of got a little bit deeper, still at the surface, but looking down, and then like 6 salmon just gracefully cruised underneath me right in front of the brook here, and immediately like I felt all my tension go away because they didn't mind me. They were super calm, and salmon are just like, I don't know, the sweetest like species. If I had a religion, it would be salmon.
I love that.
So that was like, that just kind of like opened up my world. I remember there was a moment that changed. I was like, this is like, it's like a second life now. Like I had like the life on land, and now there's this other universe I get to explore.
Yeah.
And huge healthy fear to like have to, like, every time I go in there, there's a lot of trepidation and stuff to work through, but it's it feels really cool. Like I'm unlocking new things in my experience.
I was gonna say, I would argue that experience that you had is one of the reasons why I think you've been so successful and your page has been so successful is, and very often a lot of the comments come from Newfoundlanders who are like, I had no idea that this was, you know, under my fishing boat, this was off my wharf, this was off the beach that I go to every single day. And so many people are like, they have no idea. And it's probably hard to believe that like this is right on their doorstep.
This whole other world exists right next to them. Like they live right next to the ocean. But if you're not, under there and seeing it, this whole other world is existing and continuing to exist even when you're not in it. And it's really cool to be able to step into that and
For sure.
find some peace for a little bit. I find it very peaceful being underwater.
Yeah.
Find some new religions. Yeah.
Yeah.
The salmon religion.
so many different ways to go with this, but I think so that people have been reaching out and be like, I never knew that was underneath me. That's exactly the kind of work that's why this is so meaningful. It's so great that you do what you do and you guys are doing what you're doing with like your future projects that you're working on, because we have like such that removed relationship with our environments and our food sources and like our sustenance, not just food, but like oxygen and like the ecosystems that keep everything working. You know, the ocean has just been this dumping place in this province. Like there's a lot of gullies and stuff around here where you can just like, you go for a walk in the woods and you see all these derelict trucks. But if you go, people just go out in the bay and dump wood stoves. One thing that has been blowing my mind is every time I go snorkeling on a beach, because it's usually good habitat for scallops. Like today we were around all those saw logs. There's always beer bottles, like caps, engine blocks. Like it's crazy to see the impact you have on the ocean bottom, because the land is almost always covered in vegetation. So things are hidden in it, but on the bottom of the ocean, things like really like they're right there in your face. And then you have all these urchins that are trying to grow on an engine block. I don't know, just really, you could really see viscerally the impact that we have. And they're just from the brief experiences that I've had. And it's important, I think, to have a relationship with our environments. The ocean is like so separate. We don't get in there to see it, so it's easy to just dump our stuff there.
This out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
Yeah.
We've seen some interesting things too. We call them dumpster dives, where we are diving underwater but collecting marine debris while we're there.
Cool.
And a lot of it is like glass bottles, and I would argue that is having a negligible effect on the ecosystem. But anytime we see any kind of plastic, we try to bring it out with us. but we found tractor steering wheels, a lot of tires.
Tons of tires.
Yeah.
So many
Lots of
tires.
tires. Golf balls. There was one, this is really cute. Sea urchins will use, they'll wear hats, and scientists aren't really sure why they do this. There's several reasons of like protection, and other sorts of things. But I once saw, it was a tiny little piece of Lego that this urchin had used, and just put it on his head as a hat.
Yeah.
They often use just like other rocks, and like natural
Okay,
form
so
things.
they take like little things and just like the spikes kind of lift them.
Yeah,
Yep.
and they
Under
put
the-
them
Yeah.
and they
Really?
rest them on their heads, so they just wear hats all day
It's
long.
disguise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't see me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
just
cool.
this little Lego blocks.
There was one time it was like a snowman, so we saw
Yeah,
it
three
was an
urchins.
urchin with like a shell or something in between, another urchin that was on top of the shell, another
jeez.
one, and another one. There was a three, so there's a stack.
But
Yeah, all hiding on top of each other, but
urchin snowman.
yeah,
Mm.
urchin snowman.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of them piled up today on different things. And yeah.
The urchins
cool.
here are quite big.
Yeah.
They look like
I
they're
noticed.
healthy size.
Yeah. There's lots of them down there.
Have you ever harvested them for their uni?
No, I mean, I've tried and then I kind of chickened out. I've gotten them up and been like, nah, on second thought.
I'll put you back.
No thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with the wrinkles too. I've done that. Had them in the fridge crawling around, then set them free. Like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
But have you?
I have, yeah. I'm not personally the biggest fan. I think we should
Yeah.
try to make some uni butter, but
Mhm.
it tastes like salty cantaloupe is the best way I can describe it, with
Doesn't
a
sound too
very
bad.
like goopy, weird texture. I'm a texture person, so I
Yeah.
think it's more the texture
It's
that gets me.
One of
but
the worst textures.
yeah,
It's basically, I would say it's kind of like almost like a loogie,
yeah.
A
Like,
real snotty,
it's
like,
very
like an
snotty.
oyster kind of, or
but less meaty.
okay.
Yeah, more
Less meaty than
like
an oyster.
suspended. Yeah,
Gee, slime.
really
a lot
selling it
slimy.
here.
And I know that like part of it could be there are like you want to get them before they've spawned, so there is some seasonality about it. And if like basically we have these cycles in the Atlantic, or this part of the Atlantic, where you have like the kelp will grow early spring, just and then kind of stop near summertime. So you have these big, boom cycles of kelp, and then the urchins will spawn and come in, and they're basically chasing this kelp. So if you try to harvest them after the kelp are mostly gone, or when they're not really eating anything, then the uni that we're eating or trying to eat is the testes, the reproductive organs. So if they're not eating really well, or they've spawned already,
Not
they
tasting
probably
good.
don't taste as good, and they're not as big, and so I'm sure, because it is a delicacy. There's a
is, yeah.
fishery here where we're selling it to
Yeah.
Japan, and
Yeah.
they love. It's
Mhm.
like this big thing, but we don't love it.
Yeah.
It's not for us.
You should try it at least once,
Yeah,
though.
give it a go. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe next time. Maybe if we go tomorrow and get some.
Hey,
Um,
we could bring you a couple back when we go on our dive.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I sounded way too optimistic when I said cool.
Yeah.
We'll see
I
how you're feeling
suppose. If-
tomorrow.
yeah.
Don't make us bring it
I'm-
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try anything once. You guys have some exciting projects on the go. Are you guys able to talk about it, or is there
I
a
don't think we are
NDA?
yet. Not
Okay, no worries
Well,
about it.
officially.
nothing specifically. I don't think.
Generally,
We
there-
do have, this isn't not something I've told you yet, but we are working on another CBC contract to film. We've already done the filming, but it is like a highlight overview of how beautiful the diving is in Newfoundland.
Oh, very
So,
cool.
yeah, that'll be coming out with CBC Life sometime in the fall.
Great.
So that was exciting.
Mhm.
Any excuse to get in the water is fun.
Yeah. So your Instagram page is like taking off. Did you set out with the intention of like kind of like growing the page and trying to, I don't know, like what's your intentions for the page? 'Cause
There was no intention to grow it, in the sense I had just been posting adventures we'd gone on,
Mhm.
and it was just a personal Instagram page for my friends. And yeah, I had started, when I started diving, basically we keep a dive logbook of every time we dive and the details from that dive. So how deep we're going, what the water temperature is, what kind of weight we used, how long the dive was, how much air we left on, that sort of thing, surface and bottom temperature. And it's a nice way to keep track of all the dives that you've done, the location, who you were with, and look back and have those memories. So we have this written copy, but I had started filming our dives and I just started posting them. I was like, this is what we went on a dive today. These are the details. These are the cool species that we saw.
Come dive with me.
Yeah, come dive.
That was the catch line.
Yeah,
Was
Yeah.
come dive with me.
And
Check.
yeah, that's how it started. And then I started my master's studying puffins, and I feel like the combo of underwater scuba diving and puffins kind of just spiraled into the algorithm, and yeah, kind of just went off. There was no intention of building a page, but it's done well, and I think it's just I enjoy being able to post it as kind of this like memory vlog of adventures we go on.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to be able to share that with other people and see their positive reactions of, yeah, like Tanner said, I had no idea this was here, or yeah. And again, it's like scuba diving is not for everybody, and like some people are really scared of the water, and that is totally okay. Like you do not need to get in the water, but it's cool to be able to
Somebody will do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool to be able to bring these videos to people who
For sure.
will never have the option to or never want to, but they can still see what's below.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very physically taxing. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It is considered an extreme sport, so it is.
It's really hard to get life
It is
insurance.
very dangerous. Oh yeah, yeah. Good luck with life
Oh,
insurance.
geez.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or any kind of insurance at all. So yeah, it's nice to be able to bring people along instead.
Right. I didn't know that about the insurance thing. I'm not diving, by the way. I haven't ever dove.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so on your page, you had this post the other day about the puffins. You just reminded me. I thought that was so awesome that you showed like some of your work on how you identify gender in puffins. And like that kind of thing. I love bringing actual science, like scientific work, like empirical inquiry into the public eye, because science has become this cultural term, this cultural institution that's like has all these connotations with it, and people lose the idea that science is actually all it is empirical inquiry. It's like we have a question and we want to discover the truest answer possible to the question. So what experiments can we conduct to find that answer, and can it be reproducible? Then we publish it and invite criticism and challenge until we settle on a result. Basic scientific method stuff. And so the more exposure we have to that, I think it's really important that culturally we embrace empirical inquiry because it's very exciting. You can do a lot of really cool stuff and like gendering puffins. I don't know if you guys have come across this. In Newfoundland, there's so much cultural knowledge, and it's like on how environmental systems work. But a lot of it, and like I'm going to lose a lot of friends by saying this, is just total BS. Like dogberries is thousands this year, boys. There's going to be some heavy snow to winter. Give me an empirical study on dogberries in winter. Just do a survey for over 10 years, the size of dogberries and how much snowfall, and then let's have that conversation. But like, there's so much like weird speculation. So it's really cool to see more science work, any kind of science work, empirical inquiry in the public eye. I love that. That video was cool. And it was really, I don't know, it was a great video. Well done.
Thank you. I think too, there's such a big disconnect from like scientific academia and the general public. And I mean, I have to read so many journal articles for my job, but there's like the jargon that's used, like this information is not easily accessible to the general public. And I feel like you can publish this impressive paper and it's like, okay, we just need to be able to communicate these findings so everyone can understand what kind of new discoveries we're making.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like being able to share even just simple things. People think of scientists of like, oh, they're in the lab doing all this like crazy shit, and I don't know, I don't understand what that's like. But yeah, being able to break it down and being like,
and
this is the kind of stuff we can do. And
that barrier of language makes it really hard for the public to embrace it and to understand. So making it like what you're doing is like democratizing science, because you're showing like, this is the complicated stuff, but this is how it's done. And like you simplify it so that somebody who doesn't know anything about what you're doing in the lab can like really respect and appreciate, oh, that's how that's done.
Absolutely. And most of it's basically like a simple recipe. Like if you can follow a recipe for short ribs, you could understand how to make
PCR,
how to do a PCR and take a blood sample from a puffin and be able to find its sex.
Right.
But,
Speaking of scientific literacy, as a high school science teacher, I'd like to chime in that Yeah, we're in a weird place with our relationship with science. It's like during COVID, things got very, very
Yeah, really
politicized.
turned.
Like, I feel like it really put a spotlight on our relationship with like scientific institutions and especially medical institutions. And yeah, I feel like for most of the last 50 years, we probably had a better relationship with our science institutions and medical institutions, where people just assumed and took for granted the idea that, there's somebody who is more qualified than me doing good work, for our betterment.
Mm-hmm.
And we've come to a point where people are questioning that and saying, well, people are questioning the COVID vaccine, and basically if somebody doesn't understand something, I feel like people are starting to question the institution itself. And I think it's tragic because most people don't understand the scientific method, don't understand the rigor that goes into things.
Yeah, and the humility. It's not about hubris. It's not about selling something. It's about just finding truth. And
yeah.
And then, science is like a pursuit of failure. Like, prove this wrong. If it doesn't prove wrong, then we have to accept this truth. Sort of.
I was gonna say the blood, sweat, and tears that like you and all these other grad students are just they're trying to find something meaningful in nature and trying to prove something or disprove something. And the whole idea, you don't even get paid to publish. Like, people who are publishing are potentially paying to publish, like
paying journal articles to be able to put your article in this journal.
And I this is a bigger problem, and I'm not going to get into it, but you're not, like, journals don't pay scientists to publish. They're not getting any of the money, and they put up paywalls, unfortunately, to these articles. So, I mean, if we're going to start anywhere in scientific literacy, it's
the publishers.
Yeah, that's true. The
But
paywalls
the
are brutal.
journals,
It's cutting people out.
Right.
Yeah.
So how is the public supposed to digest, understand, and form an opinion on a scientific paper or discovery, whatever, if they can't even access it because they have to pay to see it?
Thankfully, Google Scholar does have a ton of access to free articles, but sometimes you find this specific article, you're like, I want to read this one, and you're like, that'll be $31.99 just to read a single article, and that's not even like a subscription to the journal for the year. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's sad when like, you're attending a university, you're attending Memorial University, and you go to look at a paper, and they don't even have access to it. You're like, how is anyone supposed to access this? If you attending a university, an accredited Canadian institution, you're a published author as well. Like, you've published scientific journals before, and you don't even have access to that. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, for sure. It's a very cut off world. And I'm not trying to get political here, but just to speak to a phenomenon I've noticed is that it's one of the biggest aversions to science, I guess, is that people confuse science for capitalism, because that's capitalism. And I'm very much a capitalist. I'm not saying that capitalism is a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing. I think it can be used for good and evil. But this is just one of the ways that, like, these paywalls are an example of, like, like Jill Taylor et al. Doesn't see the money that that the article's generating. So people will be like, science, they'll see that as like the science is bad. But that's a really terrible mistake, and I could understand why it's made. And I don't know.
It is. The publishers just have taken advantage of this knowledge that people want access to, and like, oh, how can we monetize this? And that's capitalism for you.
The often publicly funded research is then put behind a paywall. It's $1 billion industry as well.
And then, of course, like, there's good science and bad science, and like, it's not hard to publish something, especially with a motive. Like, so many things get published with a motive. There's scientific bias, like confirmation bias. You have an idea, and it's like, well, did this experiment, prove the idea right, but like, not enough room for criticism or faulty experimentation, and that gives the entire institution of science a bad rep.
And even just back to the literacy part, like, among academic circles, like, there are journals that everyone knows are like pretty like shady journals that you can pay them to let
Right.
Them,
Yeah.
you publish your paper,
Yeah.
and I think it's just one of those things. If you know which ones to look out for, you do. But
Yeah.
again, like, how would you know that as someone from the general public?
Yeah.
And yeah, there are, like you had mentioned, the scientific method. Like, there should be all these steps to put in place that we don't. But there's gonna be people who, either willingly or not willingly, like, it might be unbeknownst to them, like a confirmation bias is that they publish this thing and it doesn't turn out to be true, but in hopes that there be other papers that follow up with that same
Right.
study and like, oh, we replicated these exact same things and we actually found something different.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
having this ongoing checkup, like, you should have people reviewing it, and there should be many checks along the way.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's really fun when that happens, and then so a paper, a lot of the worth comes from how many times is it cited again,
Right.
and like how
Yeah.
many people are relying on this work, using these findings to explain something else. So if you have something really groundbreaking or really useful, you end up being cited a lot or a lot more. So like if somebody were to publish, let's say shoddy science, and if it's not redacted, if it stays up, having somebody do a follow-up study, disprove it, and then that's what ends up being cited instead, and that's how the wheel keeps turning, right? The
Mhm.
machine moves forward, the bad science is left in the dust,
Yeah.
and then what is generally accepted as the correct science will hopefully
Yeah.
be moved
Mhm.
to the future.
Yeah.
Just fun.
I wonder on your side of things, because I'm an English teacher, but I have a huge fascination for science. I get to teach it, but like grade 7, 8, 9 science, which is super fun to teach.
That
'cause
is
That's
that's
probably
actually
the
the
most
fun
fun.
science,
Yeah.
and like there's a really sad phenomena that like most people will lose interest in science by the time they get to high school,
Mhm.
and like this happens all the time. They're just asking, well, when can we learn about space again? Or like they'll ask
Yeah.
about topics that they were learning in middle school, junior high. It's like, yeah, because that was the fun stuff.
Yeah.
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 Sorry, go ahead.
What was I saying with that? Hubris, I think, is one of the biggest things that like inhibits like good science. I think if you're gonna be doing empirical inquiry, then you need to have a mindset going into it like, I need to be proven wrong here. Like, I have this theory, I think this is the case, so I'm going to conduct this experiment to see if it's not the case, and I hope somebody else, if I do the experiment and it proves that this is the case, then maybe somebody smarter than me or more creative than me can come in and do this experiment again. So you should always be kind of pursuing your thing to get proved wrong. And I think like a lot of good scientists kind of have this mindset in a way. But I don't know, I think the general public kind of looks at the institution of science is a little bit pompous, or like, because it's in an ivory
Absolutely.
tower.
'Cause
And
it
I think
is.
that's-
It totally
is
certainly can be,
pompous.
yeah.
It's a big. Can we swear on this?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I could also beep it out if any. But I think, I don't know, guys out in the audience, do you guys mind if they swear? All 2 or 3 of you that
Yeah.
don't ever watch this.
I was
This
gonna
is
say-
just a complete indulgence for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Lifelong learner.
academia is a big dick swinging contest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's
Fair
publish or
enough.
perish, right?
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
that's right.
there is this incentive that you have to be producing science, you have to be publishing, because you have to make a living, unfortunately.
Obviously, you don't get tenure, you don't get the
Mhm.
research grant
Right.
you wanted. Like,
Yeah.
all of this is hinging on the fact that you publish. So
Yeah.
this also, other side of capitalism is pushing people through it and being like, produce more knowledge, like,
Yeah.
get this going.
And where those grants come from is super important too.
Mhm.
Like that's where a lot of the bias comes from. Like a lot of the companies, they'll be like, okay, this guy's going to publish that, I don't know, oil has no impact on the climate, or,
Yeah.
or nominal impact on
Yeah.
the climate, and
Funded-
look at the funding that
Funded
article
by
gets.
BP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should ask some questions there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, it is. I think publicly funded research is so important that way. Like,
Absolutely.
where's the money coming
Yeah,
from? If it's
yeah.
it's coming from our tax dollars, it should be for
Mhm.
the benefit of all.
Mhm.
It
If
should
it's coming from
be-
private industry, it's very sketchy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the pharmaceutical company and oil companies, those
Yeah.
although a lot of that science is like privately funded, and that's, I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
trouble there.
A lot of it's not peer reviewed though. So a lot of companies, a lot of
It's hard.
companies
Yeah, the
will
peer review process is like the self-regulating
Yeah.
tool. It
they'll
makes it
pay
beautiful.
a lab to like do some science, and then it's like, oh, it's not published, it's not peer
Yeah.
reviewed. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're right, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, cool. Let's take it back under the ocean.
Mhm.
Have you ever felt super in danger on the ocean. You guys were telling me a story earlier today about air regulators, but any story at all about were you ever like anything happened that was like, oh, that was a close one?
Never endangered in the sense that I thought my life was at risk. All the training we do and the certifications we do
Right.
are to prep us for things to go wrong underwater. It's pretty much your open water certification, your advanced, your rescue, like all these courses you take into the endless amounts of courses you could take are just to prep you for when things do go wrong. There was actually this summer, we were at a dive where it was just really, really cold at depth. It was a beautiful, hot, sunny day. It was like 32 air temperature, and we got down to just over 40 feet, and it was 0 degrees Celsius. This was in July. Like,
Yeah, wow.
we expect 0 degrees in like maybe December until March, but outside of that, that was not what we were expecting. And you, again, we were talking about, you just feel it in your face. It's so cold.
Yeah.
Because it was so
can
cold though, I've never actually been diving with like my regulator in 0 degree water. So this thing called a free flow happened, where there's basically just air being constantly pushed through it, and it feels like air is just being like
This is because moisture
shoved
from your
through.
breath like froze the thing open, or
No, like, so your
Just
regulator
contracts.
has a bunch of flexible parts in it.
okay.
So rubbers, like plastics, and there are regs that are specifically designed for cold water. Like, they need to be
Okay.
made in a certain way that they can. So a lot of companies will say these are cold water regs.
Right.
And like you said,
We
you would
got to
never
test mine out, and it's
Yeah.
not.
you never brought yours to 0.
Not to 0, no.
Yeah.
I've taken it
So-
down to 4 degrees, which is still really cold, and it's never proven any issue.
No.
But I mean, the safety mechanism on that itself is that if it malfunctions open. So at least you're getting air. Like,
Right.
you're not out of air. You just burn through your air super fast. It's basically just bubbling for free through it. And yeah, we basically had to do emergency ascent, where I took Tanner's spare regulator, and we both have 2 hoses, so we both have a second airway, and we just ascended together through that. But I think that was the closest I've ever felt to being. It was just something that went wrong. Like,
Right.
it was unexpected. We had to terminate that dive and kind of reevaluate at the surface and check in and be like, okay, are you okay? We're okay. And then we did a really shallow dive closer to shore, where we were only down at like 20 feet. And so the water temperature wasn't as cold. But yeah, I didn't ever feel endangered. Like, so much about scuba diving is being able to trust the person you're diving with. And I trust Tanner immensely. Like, you are trusting this person with your life, that like, if something malfunctions on your equipment and you need to grab your buddy and use their air source, that they're close enough, that they are equipped to help you, that they understand what you're signaling to them, because you can't speak to each other. And yeah, there needs to be that trust there. And yeah, I felt
Right.
fine about that, but it was definitely something afterwards where I had to debrief and be like, whoa, that hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
I didn't really like
How you
that.
feeling?
Yeah.
Were you shaken up
Let's
after?
not do that again. A little bit
A
at the
little bit,
surface.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, I think even when it was happening, I was like, oh, something's not quite right with my reg. And it didn't quite click in my brain that it was free flowing. I don't know. I just was like, this isn't feeling right. This is like, something's wrong. And in that moment, I just was like, okay, I'm going to take your reg. And then basically when I took his reg, we have to like stay like right next to each other and like face to face, because like I'm attached now to his air tank, and so we have to stay closer of proximity. But when we got to the surface, we probably chatted for like half an hour about just like what we could do to avoid that in the future, what we liked or didn't like about what happened. Just a lot of discussion.
Because it sounds super scary, exciting, like, you know, but the conversation, because you have all these silent conversations underwater because you can't speak, so there's so much non-verbal communication that goes on. So we were constantly checking in with each other. So, you know, every couple of minutes or less than that, we'll look at each other and like.
How slow is the descent from 40 feet? Like, how much time would that have taken?
To get down to depth?
No, because you were going up.
Yeah,
like,
to go back
like you were
up.
at 40 feet when you had to go up.
When we
you,
ascended?
Like
together. There.
6 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We took our time, because we still have to do a safety stop and
let the nitrogen out of our body.
Yeah.
So
So you
your
do
blood doesn't
a
explode.
quick safety stop at 5 meters. But sorry, what I was saying was, you're always checking in with each other. You ask like, "You okay?" And then you do that back, like, "Yeah, everything's fine."
And we're always checking in on each other's air levels.
Yep.
We know each other really well now, so we kind of know how fast each other goes through air.
Yeah.
We're always typically within like 100 to 200 psi of each other through the whole dive, which
Yeah.
is kind of
Yeah,
cool.
unless-
That I feel like I'm really in tune with how you consume air.
Yeah.
But around like it's at least been like 15, 20 minutes in, I feel like we always do like a air amount check to be like, you tap your arm like that and you go, that
Mhm.
means basically like how much air do you have, and we tell each other.
Yeah. So what like the way it was from my perspective was we're down at depth, and you like I could tell that Jill was kind of concentrating on her equipment, because normally you're off chasing something or you're very outwardly focused, and I could tell like, oh, she's like, you were kind of checking your reg, like something didn't seem quite right, and I asked, and you're like yeah, like something's up, and like there was nothing. Again, at that point, like you didn't think anything was totally wrong, but something was up. So we just hung around, just floated next to each other, just like looking at each other, and you were checking on your stuff, and then eventually you were like,
And then it was not like something I had to like dramatically grab
No.
his reg, and it was like I had no reg in my mouth and I was running out of air. It was
Right.
very just like I pointed to his and I was like,
okay.
okay, I'm gonna take it
So I was
now.
like, okay, and then you
Yeah.
took yours out of your mouth, grabbed mine, locked arms, and then. whoop,
I
up
just
we
imagine
go.
like an outside third person watching this happen would have been like
Yeah.
the least dramatic
Right.
thing
I-
ever.
Yeah,
Kind of
Being
looking forward to like
"Oh,
a
what
shark
just
attack
happened?"
story. but,
Right?
scroll
I
down.
know.
Yeah.
And I have nothing either. Like
I
that's
know.
that's the scariest thing I've ever done.
Okay, sorry. This is not
I punched a
related to
sculpin
me,
once.
but this was something that's scary happened. So on my advanced open water course, which basically is a course you take where you're certified you can go up to 100 feet deep, which is about as deep as you can go recreationally. This is in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. Was going down on this beautiful shipwreck, but because we're in this course, I was just paired with this random person that was on this course, and we had dove through the whole course together. So far, things have been fine. Like he was fine, whatever.
He was from Ontario.
He's from Ontario, yeah. First red flag.
Yeah.
And anyways, at depth, so we're at 100 feet, the whole group of us. We have our instructor and our dive master with us. And yeah, I guess he just panicked. And at 100 feet, like, we're not playing around here. Like,
Yeah.
you can kind of mess up some things when you're only at 30 feet, because you basically, anything below 30 feet, you have to do a safety stop. If you're at 30 feet, you're pretty good to like make an emergency ascent where you could just like basically rocket up to the surface and like get to air if you needed. But if you're at 100 feet, like you have too much nitrogen in your blood, like you have to slowly ascend. Like we're not joking around here. Like you could bubble yourself to death. And anyways, he kind of freaked out. He had this like panic in his eye, and because he's my buddy, like I'm supposed to be like watching
Okay.
him and he's supposed to
Yeah.
be watching me, and he basically just started kind of like grabbing me a little, and I was like, okay, I'm not really liking this. And thankfully our instructor was close, and I basically just like came and tapped him, and I was like pointed to the guy. I was like, okay, I'm not
Right.
qualified or equipped to deal with this. I don't really
Yep.
know what he wants. But he basically like ripped his rag out of his mouth at depth, and he was like panicking and like trying to like swim up to the surface, and our instructor had to like pull him down, had to hold the back of his head and shove his regulator in his mouth to like keep him from breathing, and then they had to slowly ascend together. And I watched the whole thing unfold, and I was like, oh, okay, no, we're not playing games. Like, one, you want a buddy you can trust, especially at 100 feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, scuba diving is not for everybody, and I'm not sure if he's still diving, but there was just like this wild panic in his eyes that you can't, if you're claustrophobic or you'd like to escape the situation, you are not leaving. At 100 feet, you are kind of stuck, at least slowly ascending. Like if you're like, oh, I'm done with this immediately, like you can't just get to the surface.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the scariest thing I've witnessed, and that like he could have
Yeah,
just
wow.
drowned on the spot right there.
Okay.
And thankfully my instructor was like able to deal with it. But yeah, I'd like to not repeat that.
Yeah.
That was not
That's
enjoyable.
so spooky.
You learn to be very picky, or at least we are very picky about who
Yeah.
we dive with. Like it's not. I feel like, we're not looking to take brand new, right out of their course people.
And if we do, we're staying at 30 feet and not going any deeper.
Right.
Yeah, unless
So-
like it's usually friends or which is for our self-preservation, and it's just one of those things. Like I imagine it's the same with mountaineering
Sure.
or rock climbing. Like
Yeah,
you don't want to be
yeah.
halfway up a
Yeah.
wall
And someone
and
panic.
then someone panicking
Or
that you
quick
don't
way
know.
down. Well, there's
Right.
one quick way down. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah,
But yeah,
we
no-
get to be very picky.
No shark stories. Sorry to disappoint.
No, I can't wait for my first shark story.
Oh,
I would love to see
hope you
one.
don't eat those words, or the
Yeah.
shark doesn't eat those words.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I hope I don't have a code brown. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. A couple of code yellows today.
absolutely. It's par for the course.
Yeah, this is the first time. Man, warm things up real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Real nice. I punched a sculpin once.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was going on?
Scared
What was
the
the
living
sculpin
Jesus
trying
out
to
of
do
me.
to you?
Man, okay, so I was diving with Mitch. Well, I was like, Mitch was in the boat, and I just was free diving for scalps in like 10 feet of water. Got out of the boat, and then I found myself in this big school of mackerel. And again, I felt calm because they were small mackerel, and they were just cruising around me. They kind of made an orb around me and then went on. I didn't know I was falling right into them. Just happened to be under the boat. That was like a cool little moment. And so I was like, very good. But I had this onion bag that was part of my thing I was using today. This like onion bag before I had the basket on it. It was just big billowing thing with a lot of strings on it. That was orange, like a lure. And it was floating behind me. I was cruising around, like looking for things, but it was my first time in the water. That was like my first day, like out away from the hotel, like actually seriously kind of doing some free diving. And I remember I just passed along the boat through its shadow. And so I felt like a shadow went over me. And I was like, and I turned around real fast, and the sculpin had been following my bag, and he was just right there with his mouth open, like, hey, Rob. And I was like, like, you're supposed to punch a shark, right? Like,
Yeah.
So the videos say.
Right in the nose.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as if that's going to work. So, sorry, sculpin. Got you good.
They're tough little guys.
Yeah, I
so
think he was okay. He was just,
Yeah.
that guy was rude.
Yeah.
Right? I was just saying hi.
Yeah.
He caught you at a very vulnerable moment.
He did, indeed. Almost a code brown.
Yeah.
Kept it
Oh,
together.
code brown over a sculpin? We'd never let you
Yeah,
live
I know,
that
it's
down.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a code fist to punch. Yeah. I'm learning the calmness. The calmness is earned, though. It's not like innate. Like you have that mammalian dive reflex where there's so much going on in your body that enables you to be underwater. But like I think there's a really strong element of mindfulness to the water too, because it's such an uncomfortable place that it's like rock climbing. Like a lot of rock climbers describe going into that state of flow. Like yes, I can fall and die. So you get into this point where it's like I need to make all the right moves. And since I've kind of been embracing that, like taking my time, get in the water, feel the temperature, feel how my breathing is, retain some oxygen, I've been noticing I'm way more comfortable in the water. I can be underwater way longer. I'm not panicking. Like before, I'd see a scallop, go straight down, come straight up as fast as I could. And now it's like I cruise my way down and just suss it out. I see one scallop, and then I'm like, well, there's another one. And there's another one. There's another one. I can like,
I was gonna say I got
Take your
to.
time and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I got to watch you. Free dive today. You're a much better free diver than I am. I feel like I not scramble, but it's a lot more of down, grab one. There was maybe twice today where I was like, oh, another one, but it was right next to it. But that comes with time, and you've earned that. But yeah, watching you go down and then drag your basket along and pick up a couple and drag it some more. And I was watching you. I'm like, how is he still down there? Like you were very graceful.
Got some good
and
lungs.
Thanks.
some very good breath holds and lung capacity. So
Thanks. Yeah. I feel like
I was impressed. I was very impressed.
It's getting longer and longer, but I'm never diving. Like haven't been diving to the point where I'm like uncomfortable and like I need air. There's a moment today where I did this long dive because there's this beautiful jellyfish array I was describing. There's like one up here, one down here, and they're reaching and braiding each other, and then there's one coming out of it on the back, and underneath it was a scallop. So I was like, dove down. I was like, I'll just slowly navigate around this. I didn't do a good job. I got stung on the lips. Because their tentacles go forever, and you don't really see them. It's like, there's the tentacles. Nope,
No.
here's another one. There's another one. They're just little thin braids. Anyway, so I got around them, got down to the scallop, and then I was like looking up at the thing. I was like, can't go straight up. I was like really taking my time, and I just kind of went down. I followed the curvature of the bottom and went deeper and deeper just to get away from them and to see if there's any more scallops. And then I was like, okay, now I'm kind of at the point of I'm uncomfortable. I want air, but it's probably 10 seconds or 15 seconds to get up. And instead of like pushing off bottom and rocketing, I was like, let's just stay calm and do an experiment. So I just kind of did a little bit of propelling, because at that point I was really negatively buoyant, and just slowly ascended until my negative buoyancy went away and I was buoyant again. And then I just stopped and relaxed. And it felt like in that moment I got way more air. Maybe it's because the air inside my lungs was expanding.
Exactly.
And I was able to retain it again, but it's like there's no rush now. Like I have all the time in the world.
You will reach the surface.
Yeah, and it felt, it was really, it felt great.
Well, one story about jellyfish or lion's manes that we saw today. We had done a dive in Harbor, Maine, so close to CBS area. It's in Conception Bay in St. John's, and yeah, we were at about 60 feet roughly, and we saw some fishing lines in front of it, like right in front of our face. Like,
Oh, wow.
some like thick fishing line, like. They're like, oh, where's this coming from? And we kind of followed them up, and it was like, whoa, they were actually tentacles. So, and they were over 60 feet long, because at that point they were
Yeah.
vertical, so they were horizontal in front of us.
Yeah.
So we just followed them up, and it was this giant lion's mane jellyfish.
Wow.
The biggest one we've ever
Yeah.
seen.
Like a meter across, kind of.
At least,
Wow.
yeah, because well, they can be
They can
to
be, yeah, they can be huge.
120 feet long.
Yeah.
Like these super thick
Massive.
braids, like the home base of all the tentacles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they followed all the way down.
Yeah,
It was-
You have a really cool video of. I was really cold at this point. My hood had popped up, and it was 3 degrees, I think.
It's chilly.
That's my
Doesn't-
entire experience. It's
Yeah.
like always
Yeah,
flowing
yeah.
in and out.
Yeah.
Not my
My
neck.
Coke Yellow is so nice.
It's not great, because it was another one of those. It was 30 degrees,
Yeah.
and then 3 degrees at the bottom. So I'm sitting on the bottom. There's a video of me shivering. You're about. I'm at least 40, 50, 60 feet away from you. You're right at the head of the jellyfish. And you
Yeah,
can,
I slowly went up and
Yeah.
followed. I wanted to
Mhm.
see at eye level.
Wow.
and you
and
can
it-
see me blowing
down
bubbles from
below.
like 6. I'm so far down, but you can see me and my bubbles going. It's like, this thing is massive.
Yeah.
The
they're amazing.
chunkiest
So cool.
lion's mane
Yeah.
jellyfish
When
ever.
when I used to commercially fish with my buddy, when we were pulling nets, like it seemed like they'd be hundreds of feet long. I know that like must have been multiple fish or jellyfish, or it could have been like one section of tentacle, and then the jellyfish, and then it stretched out again, but it'd be like hundreds of feet long. It just kept
Mhm.
coming in and coming in, and get stung up to your elbows. And I've kind of learned to love the sting of it. I still feel it on my lips. And it's kind of like,
Get your limp
Yeah.
plumper
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's
chapstick
nice.
on.
I remember the first time, like, the ocean's different every time too. Like, it's never the same. So, like, if you dive after rain and it's a little bit of rain, like, have you guys noticed that effect when, like, there's fresh water sitting on top,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a point when, like, you push your hand through the water and it goes murky, but it could be clear, but then when you disturb it, it gets
Mhm.
murky. That
Yeah.
always creeps me out.
Mhm.
I was diving in Jackson's Arm, and just off this little beach in the ground, it's like a nice gradient going down. And at this point, I think the deepest dive I'd done maybe was like 20 feet. And I was just trying to get comfortable, and it was a really uncomfortable situation because there's the murky fresh water on top, and then very, very cold but super crystal clear underneath, and it's
Mhm.
just this expanse of blue. And it's one of the first times I saw like the blue that goes forever, and that was really uncomfortable. And then seeing this, like, it felt like I had a roof over me, and I was just mindfully trying to make myself comfortable in that environment. And I'd go down, and there's lots of scallops. I was only picking one or two and leaving like dozens. I was kind of following the bottom of the ocean, and then I was like, okay, it's time for air. And I went up, and I didn't realize how deep I had gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the time when I did panic. I was like, shit, I got to get up there now. And I started like beating my way up, and I was like, like, I got to the top. I was like, jeez. But I feel like now with my knowledge, I would have just relaxed and let myself descend. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different every
But
time.
The seeing the roof over you, it just like
Mhm.
it triggered this like, oh, fuck, okay, no, stay calm. Okay, stay
Yeah.
calm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel
You know,
trapped. Yeah.
Get the chest going like, wants to that.
Yeah, one of the coolest things about scuba diving is, at least for me, it's one of the most mindful, calmest activities I do. Like, I can be a fairly anxious person, and when you put your reg in and you just get to slowly float down, and if you wanted, you could stay in that area that you had to hold your breath
Right.
for 10 seconds and go down. You
Yeah.
could just stay there.
Yeah.
And you actually get to be part of it. You get to see other things moving around you. Because, like, when we go down, imagine being those salmon that floated by. It's like they hear this thrashing and splashing,
Yeah.
and then your bubbles coming out, and you're seeing like a fraction of what's around you. When we scuba dive, it's great because you get to go down and you just get to sit there, and then you see fish. They're coming to you because you're slow enough. Like flounder are a really big one where they'll just like they just follow you everywhere, and they're
Very
so
curious.
curious.
Yeah.
I will say I'll counter that.
Yeah.
I really enjoy how peaceful scuba diving is,
Yeah.
but there's something very, like, we're kind of cheating the system by bringing oxygen down with us, in
Mhm.
that we get to sit there with our tank on and stay down. And there are species we get to see closer up because they'll come to us or they're not bothered by our bubbles. But there's something like today, I was even thinking about this while I was under, like using your own set of lungs as your only oxygen source and diving down on just your breath alone and not altering that. Like you are like any other animal in this ecosystem currently. Like you're like an otter that would be diving down, or any kind of bird that would be diving down. We're not diving down to the depths that like gannets do, but it's really cool. You're more a part of the ecosystem, I feel like, that way, and that you're not altering that or taking a cheat system out.
Yeah.
But you are able, if I could hold my breath longer, I'd probably feel differently. But with scuba diving, you really do. Like you can just sit at the bottom for an hour, a full hour, and just enjoy your surroundings.
Yeah.
I'm greedy.
I want to try it.
Yeah.
I want more. I want more than a 10, 15 second glimpse.
I love the analog nature of it, though. I love that relationship of like, these are my lungs, and like I love expanding the time I'm down there, and like my comfort level going into it. There's something really beautiful about that. Like every summer I look forward to walking barefoot. Like in the spring, my feet are so sensitive, but now I like trail run barefoot because it just feels so analog. I just really like this is my limiting factor, and just like strip it down to the bare minimum. I don't know. There's
Get
just
those
something
calluses built up.
Yeah, like a resilience and like a more sensitivity, like on foot placement. You're more concentrated on what you're doing. But I don't know why I'm talking about barefoot. But yeah, I don't know. It's just more analog, I guess. It's more like you get that. I don't know. So holding your breath is just another one of those things you have to be really there for.
It's cool that you can push your physiology.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
like,
so amazing what the
like,
body can do. Like people free dive for hundreds of meters, or I think the record's like 130 meters or something, just on one breath.
Crazy.
Meters. Like that's
Yeah.
bonkers.
I'm
Very
okay.
bonkers.
I don't need to go to those.
No.
Yeah, I don't either. I have no desire, but like
To black out too, like that.
Yeah.
That's,
To be able to do that is the blackouts, but to just be able to do that, and I think it's cool that you can alter that and like push it, right? Like it's one thing to bring a tank down or buy a bigger tank so you can stay down longer. It's another thing to spend your summer, free diving for scallops and getting to see you push that time out and expand that amount of air you can, keep in your body, which is very cool. Yeah.
I could do this all night. I think I want to. Do you mind if we take a little intermission, or we can end it here? But I got to check on something. It's coming up to a deadline for something.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
please
no.
do.
In 5 minutes? Yeah, cool.
This is great.
Take a pause.
Yeah, cool. A little pause. How's Liam doing?
I want to hear you guys talk about that giant octopus.
Oh yeah. Welcome back to the lounge.
Chatty.
In
Chitty,
River
chitty,
Sea
bang,
Motel.
Oh.
Hotel.
It doesn't have to say. It doesn't have a.
It just seems a little dingy. But then again, we are a little dingy. We don't mind a little dinge.
Some of the best things in life are dingy.
I don't think I'd want to be running a business that didn't have any dinge. I don't think I could run a business.
Gotta have
like
a
that.
tinge of dinge.
Gotta have that tinge
Just
of
a
dinge.
little tinge of dinge. Keep things spicy.
Come to the River Sea for a tinge of dinge.
She's not musty, but there's a tinge of dinge.
Like a scallop.
Mm.
Pull a muscle.
Fuck.
Pluck a muscle.
Pluck a muscle. Tear an ACL.
Dog CL. Poor
Little
dog CL.
bear.
Oh, little bear.
Too soon, buddy.
Yeah. Sad.
Poor little bear, man. I think I
Poor
gave him
little bear.
hyperthermia yesterday. Just on the couch all day after a run.
Oh.
I gotta respect his age. I keep forgetting he's getting
Yeah. What is he
older.
in dog age? 8 times 7.
56.
Thank you. English teacher over here.
Yeah. I am no math teacher.
Good thing the scientist got the arithmetic on her hand. Hey.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at mental math. I just remember some specific multiplication
You at
ones
least
from
got your
being a
7
kid.
times tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Welcome to the conversation, Liam, who's been sitting just over by the
Just
in the
enjoying.
Shadows.
Enjoying
time.
from the darkness.
Yeah.
He's emerged from the shadows. Welcome, Liam.
Yeah, like a what's like a skeet out of the mermaid's purse? No.
Just skeeted out of the mermaid's purse.
How
It's a
all-
skate, but
How
you'd be
all-
a skeet if you came out of a mermaid's
Yeah,
purse.
if I were in a mermaid's purse, buddy, it'd just be skeet.
Skeeting left and right in that mermaid's purse.
Her hair was green as seaweed.
This is how all skeets are born. Mermaids' purses.
Yeah. Somebody skeets in a mermaid's purse, and then
And then you get me.
it's got a whole lot less PG since Liam arrived.
I'm old brag. You've
We,
seen my downstairs mix-up.
Part 2 of this is going to be not for the public. It's going to be for adult 18 plus.
Personal use only.
No, that's pretty good. What was that story you wanted to hear? Tell us or ask us.
No, I was
Ask
stoked
them.
actually to hear about the mermaid's purses because I always thought that they were baby sharks. I didn't know that they were skates. I didn't even know that a skate was a thing aside from something that went on ice. Yeah. So
that
yeah,
You're,
I guess this one could go on ice too. Do people eat skate?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there a
okay.
skate fishery?
people do eat skate. Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that.
I feel like there's people that eat just about everything that's
I'm not
poisonous down
surprised.
there.
I shouldn't be
Mm.
surprised. Back to the shark comment, though. Sharks, because they're related to skates, do have a similar, also called a mermaid's purse, but they come in all different shapes and sizes depending on the species, but some of them are more like this conical sphere, this like kind of twisty screw top. But they're all sorts of different.
Are they
shapes.
laid? They just lay these things and then.
Yeah, again,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
attach them normally to some sort of substrate, like in this little kelp bit or
Right.
something close to a rock or some kind of vegetation, so they don't float away. And then when they're ready to emerge, they bust forth.
But
into
like
the
you said,
world.
the skate, the shark ones are conical versus the skate one is like the pizzaroni with the two danglers that I'm thinking of. Kind
It
of
does
thing.
look like a pizzaroni.
I know what you're talking about. I've
Okay.
seen those things.
Yeah,
I've
man,
seen
used
those
to love
things
catching
before.
them.
Yeah, they
Find
wash
them
up
on
and
the
dry
beaches,
out,
kids,
right?
all
Yeah,
They dry
exactly.
out,
Okay, yeah,
You got it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Like a
it's
pair
a
of
baby,
britches.
skate egg casing.
Yeah.
Did it dry? When it dries up, is it dead, or has it?
It's-
Has,
Oh,
it,
yeah,
has
yeah,
the
the
skate
case-
escaped?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's usually after
Yeah,
they
okay.
pop out.
Neat.
which is
Yeah.
sometime in the summertime. So if you're seeing them anytime around there, then they're empty.
I was gonna say we did a dive in Brigus, and we actually saw one that was maybe about yay big. So
was really
it
small.
must have been pretty fresh out.
Fresh.
Wow.
Fresh out the pizzaroni.
Pizzaroni,
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
Fresh out that Roni
Oh,
room.
I'm gonna get you guys tea.
Oh, thanks.
Continue to chat.
Oh, thank you, Rob.
You're pretty close though. The whole skate shark.
So are skates
Very.
7 guild or 6 guild?
I'm gonna say 6, but I could be wrong. That's just me pulling it out of my butt.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm gonna say 6. We should look that up.
Are
Somewhere.
shark and skate genitals called cloacas? Like alligators
Yep.
and snakes?
Birds as well have
Birds,
cloacas.
yep. Cloacas and claspers.
Clasper.
The male genitalia. Is
Oh
called
man,
a
I'm referring to
clasper.
wieners as claspers from now on.
And they have 2.
Yeah.
They literally have 2 that get to trail behind them a little bit.
So busier than a dog with 2 dicks is not talking about dogfish.
it is now. Yeah.
It is
Busier
now.
than a dog with 2 claspers.
Claspers.
Yeah.
Claspers.
Brace of claspers.
A brace of claspers.
Hey, I like that. Brace.
A brace, yeah, that's a good measurement. That's a good unit of measurement.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reading a Farley Mowat novel. I feel like it's always like a brace of hens or a
Yeah.
brace of partridge.
Nice brace of rabbit.
He really embraced the vernacular.
Yeah.
Fairly
What do
much.
we get?
Skates are like stingrays in that they have 5 pairs of gill slits that are located
5.
ventrally. So yeah, 5.
So there's
Not
5,
6 or
6, and 7.
5,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did
5, 6,
not know
7.
that.
Cool.
We learn new things every day.
That's
Loves learning.
fantastic.
Bunch of teachers on stage,
Yeah.
scientists.
Yeah.
Now we're learning.
Yeah, that's such a cool thing about this, about the world we live in, but also a little bit. I think it definitely has way more advantages than disadvantages, but the ability to just look up a piece of knowledge like that, because we kind of take for granted. We take that for granted often. That it's like right there at our fingertips. So I find like sometimes. I don't know if I can say it's harder to, I think, in get kids enthusiastic about learning new things, because it's just like, yeah, but it's in my pocket, I can just Google it. But it's like, yeah, but it's also, but you want to know the thing, like just learn the thing. Like, yeah, you could Google it, but like that knowledge is cached in the data world. Like the active learning is experiencing it being cached in your world, and that's growth, that's life, that's experience, that's what we're here for. So just like, isn't learning new things, I don't know, it just excites
Yeah.
me.
Advising
On the
myself
shelf.
while you guys were diving there earlier today. We were sat in the boat, and I can't remember what it was we were BSing about, but there was a question, and there wasn't a definitive answer known amongst the 3 of us. And I caught myself thinking, like, I love being in places where there's no cell service, so you can't just, there's
Google
an
it.
answer, and now you
Yeah.
got the momentary thing, and then Yeah, it was a nice little bit of removal there out on the water today.
Mhm.
I wish I could remember. There's a quote.
Your phone can remember it.
I know, right? This is so ironic. There's very famously somebody had said, never memorize something you can look up. I feel like we've taken that
I
way
don't
too
like
far.
that. I don't like that.
That was my
Right?
issue with high school physics. It's like, why are we supposed to memorize all of these formulas when we can have it on a book?
Because you get intuition from that. Like you
Mhm.
can't. AI will never have. Well, I'm not going to say never. Probably will. Probably already has better intuition than us. But like intuition is the human quality that like really guides our intelligence. That what's the point? It's like the point is the process. Like the process is the point. Just do it because you can't measure the offshoots of the act of memorization. Not just the discipline of memorizing something will serve you, but then knowing it, you never know. Like knowing that, having that in your consciousness could like expand into other knowings. But if you just like leave it to the internet, then you actually don't be afraid to hold more knowledge.
Yeah, I guess my frustration with it at that point in time, now this is totally not related to water or anything fun, but it is related to learning, and learning's fun, was like I found that the memorization of formula or repeatable things that you could find quite easily that didn't change your understanding of it detracted away from, like you said, the fun part of the science, understanding how this math translates to the world. And it was more so like focused on like, remember this because this is that, instead of like, this is that and this is what it represents to the universe, That's
a tool.
a digression,
It's a
isn't it?
tool.
No. Let's keep digressing. Let's follow these threads. Do you guys ever experience that the fear that by learning new things you're forgetting old things, that your brain only has so much capacity? Like I'm a guy with a lot of hobbies and I forget more than I know in each discipline.
I think it makes me sad. I feel like I wish I didn't. I had this like endless mind bank that I could just keep adding new things in, but I think, yeah, my memory fails me more often than I care to, and I think I'm also guilty of this, of like relying on my phone to just look up something and then not actually cementing that into memory further. And yeah, it's sad. I don't know where we're gonna take this.
No, we talk about this a lot, where like we're so forward facing, or at least we're more forward facing than we certainly were growing up, probably, in terms of like reminiscing on things or reading the same book over and over, watching the same movie over and over. We have endless novel videos, pictures, reels.
Right. Yeah, I used to listen to the same CD for a summer.
Right?
You 3 months straight would never leave my car.
You probably knew every single lyric, and it was
I knew
embedded.
every little intonation,
Right? I feel
I
like
don't
we're
know
always
things deeply anymore. Yeah, choreography.
I can't even. If it
You know
were
what,
tape,
though?
It'd be stretched out.
Almanac, I probably listen to that as many times as choreography now.
Definitely.
I was in his top 0.005 listenership on 2 accounts. Yeah, I'm like, it was a little bit much. Don't let it go to your head, Del, if you ever watch this. It's not about you. It's about your music. Love you, bud.
I got a question here now while we're still somewhat close to the thing, where you're talking about memory and like capacity that one holds for memory, in terms of like thought expansion and diving. Have any of you ever tried like mind mapping in order to try and remember more things? I don't understand how it works. But,
I don't know what it is.
Like you build like a castle or like a map or some sort of
Okay. Yeah.
tangible
I've watched Sherlock Holmes.
thing in your head about Sherlock Holmesy kind of thing. With that, do you ever do that when you're diving, or do you need to do that when you're diving to like remember where you are or where you've been? Like, because I feel like it'd be really hard to tell direction or trajectory or whatever when you're underwater.
Navigation underwater is really tricky. It's easy when you have like a straight cliff wall or something. You can follow along and do a linear line and then turn around halfway and go right back. But we have done some dives where you basically take a bearing of a direction. Like we have compasses with us when we're underwater, and we basically just follow that bearing. And yeah, I hope you make it back to the wharf that you started on, even though you're like... Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But yes, to answer your question with the mind map part, I'm a very visual learner, and so I think sometimes I like visualize us from like a bird's eye view. Like I'll like soar up and be like, we're here, the wharf's here, we're gonna do like 45 degrees out here, take a little pit stop inland at 90, and then head back at like a 30-degree angle.
Mhm.
But I think that's easier to like visualize from above. But yeah.
If you're visualizing it from above, do you pretend you're a certain bird?
I think I have to
An
answer that I'm a
albatross.
puffin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It has to be on brand.
Well, I was gonna say one of the, I guess, cool things, but also challenging things about navigating underwater, is like on the best day you've got like 40 feet of visibility.
Yeah.
So you're navigating, like you can't see. You wouldn't be able to see like the full contents of this room. So you take a bearing, and it's really hard. It's really easy to like get off course, go for like 10 meters, and then you think you're on the same bearing. You look at your compass again, but you're already off. Like
It's
you're
hard enough to do that when you're trying to stay on course with your bearing. It's so much harder when you're like, oh, there's a cool fish.
Yeah.
Oh, there's scallops over here. And then you're like, bam, 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 and then like by the time you like look at your bearing again, you're like, whoa, where am I?
You're way better at this underwater.
That just comes with practice.
Yeah, than I am. I often rely on you
I'm getting
to
this
bring us back, because you have in the past. Like
I
you're
have,
really
yeah.
good at this, so I very often kind of rely on you to bring us back to the same point.
I had a thing happen today that was like, I've noticed this happened to me before in water, but after that dive where I couldn't regulate my right ear, I had a lot of pressure in there, and I came up, and I had really bad vertigo when I had a bit of barotrauma a couple of weeks ago. I was really dizzy when I got on land, but so I was up and I was swimming through deep water. I couldn't see what was below me. I had no markers. And I looked up and I was like, okay, they're over there. I started swimming towards you guys, and then 10 seconds later I looked up and I was like facing the open ocean, and you guys were 180 degrees behind me. And I swam in a perfect 180 degree turn. I was like, I must have vertigo right now, but you can't tell in water. And so what I did is I dove down, blew air into I just kind of pushed a little harder, and it regulated. And then, I don't know, it's just kept checking it. I don't know. It went away after a few minutes, but that was just a little like, oh geez, this is the thing
And
that
that's
could
with
happen.
vertigo. I feel like even swimming today on the surface, like trying to be like, oh, I gotta go dump my scallops off of the boat, and like being like, okay, boat's right here. I'm gonna swim straight and like put your head in just because you can kick more efficiently. And then I'd look up and be like, oh, the boat's over here.
Yeah.
And I like redirect, and that's without vertigo. So.
To go back to the mind map, I think that humans are very adept for spatial awareness, and I think that we like in the similar way that we remember music. Like uncannily, like people with dementia remember music. I think that people remember spatial places really, really well. It really gets ingrained. So, like, I notice when I'm listening to audiobooks, if I'm on a walk or something, an interesting place will happen in a book in an interesting place, and every time I'm in that place, I'll remember that scene in the book years on. I can quote books if I'm standing in that place. It's like
That's
it's
cool.
weird. I think our relationship with place is like super profound, and it's really fun to explore that.
That's one of the things. Like I've never dove. I've very seldomly snorkeled, and I have a healthy reverence for the ocean and water in general. And I think that kind of comes from, like you mentioned, like humans and their spatial awareness. Like I'm very spatially aware on land, aerially aware when I'm in the air for whatever. But like when I'm in the water, the awareness, I feel like a fish out of water. You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
there's
'Cause
no
you are.
bearing. I am. Yeah. No,
You
Yeah,
are a
yeah.
naked primate trying to be in the water
Yeah.
where you're not supposed to be.
probably have trunks on, but maybe not.
Yeah, probably not, but
We're kidding.
You're not fuzzy like a chimpanzee.
Relatively, yeah.
Yeah. It's much finer.
Well, okay, sorry. I don't know if this answers your original question about this. I find when we're diving, there's so many things you're keeping track of. Like to even notice the things around you, you need to be at a point where your buoyancy is under control, so you're not sinking.
So
you're
many
not
dimensions.
You're not flying up. You're regulating your ears, so your eardrums don't burst. You're keeping track of your air, you're keeping track of your bearing, you're keeping track of your partner. There are so many things you're keeping track of. I've never once on a dive, like you don't really get to let your mind wander. It is like it's the most present
That's right.
activity I think I've ever done, other than maybe rock climbing. So like it's very, very seldom that I think I would have the mental capacity to like map out, just to have that like higher thought or have that moment to like, oh, I can think about this thing that is outside of breathe, don't sink.
And that's the
You
most
mean for
beautiful thing about
navigation?
it.
No, it's for navigation or
okay.
for just, he was asking like, oh yeah, do we,
I say wait till you have to navigate a dive, and then maybe you'll.
that's what I mean.
Right.
But like,
map.
I don't have the mental capacity to be, creating a mental map of anything, let alone like, I'm just here to see, oh, there's a fish over there, and it takes me so much to like continue to breathe and to go over there and check it, and you know.
In my experience so far, I think that now that you articulated that, I think that is probably the most beautiful part of this like sci-fi fantasy world that I've described, like exploring, like, whoa, this is a new universe. I think it's not just the universe physically, but also psychologically, because like rock climbing will pull you into the rock face and exactly you prioritize your movements. But rock climbing is very extreme, and it does that for like, I think for the visceral feeling of like I might just die even though you're strapped in. But like the diving does that so automatically and so gently, it just pulls you straight into this mindful state where you are 100% present. And if you're not, like, it's very urgent. Like you feel the pressure. So it's like, you act without thinking, you regulate, or you feel the urge to breathe. And like, so these things, it's very impressive. And I don't think I'm really equipped to actually dive the way that you guys dive with scuba gear, because I don't think I could keep track of somebody else. I'd be too irresponsible. Like I have a good enough time. It's a good enough challenge for me right now, just free diving and keeping track of myself, let alone like, I feel like my partner would just be over like, and I'd be like, scallop.
You guys have both kind of casually just brushed off the extreme designation of free diving and scuba diving in gentle reference there. But like, it's no doubt an extreme sport. Like you're with, say, like mountain biking, rock climbing, snowboarding, skydiving, or whatever. Like, yeah, they're all considered extreme, you know, because you're putting yourself in a situation where bad things can happen based on choice, preparation, blah, blah, blah. But like, all of them are still in places where you can breathe. You know, you do one thing wrong there and you're dead.
Yeah.
You drown on a thimble of water, you know,
Yeah,
let
that's
alone
right.
a full ocean.
There's a couple there floating around you.
Yeah, a couple thimbles.
Yeah.
Well, I had the first time I even thought about it as an extreme sport was basically, without giving away too many details, looking for just insurance for us to scuba dive and like get paid for it, to be
Right.
part of some sort of production activity. And yeah, just having an insurance broker be like, oh yeah, like this is like extreme, like we need to find you insurance that covers extreme sports. I was like, extreme sports? I think I have a hard time wrapping my head around it because it is the most peaceful thing
Yeah.
you
I
can
never
do.
thought about it till you said it tonight.
It's so
You're
peaceful.
supposed to be breathing really slow. Like if you're
Yeah.
breathing too fast, it's like you're not a good scuba diver.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be really even kicking. Like you're not really swimming. Like you're frog kicking a bit, but like you're not using your arms at all. Like it's
Yeah.
a very like motionless sport,
Yeah.
which doesn't, it feels different than like intensely climbing
Yeah.
and
Sure.
peaking this mountain or
You're weightless too. That's something we haven't talked about.
Oh my God, yeah.
So like we
Yeah.
have all this restrictive gear. We strap on like 30 pounds of lead so we can sink, right? Because you're so buoyant with your neoprene. You have all this heavy gear, and it is a pain to get in. Like that's one of the restrictive parts. Is like if you have back issues, knee issues, it's really hard on the body. The moment you start floating and you sink down, you are weightless.
If you ever had a
So
dream where you're flying, you're like, I want to experience that in real life, go
Dude,
dive.
100%. It is
the
so
closest.
serene.
Yeah.
You
It
can do that
feels
for real.
so nice on the body, and just I love that feeling.
Besides skydiving, it's
Yeah.
about as weightless
Yeah.
as you
But
can get.
skydiving's in
Yeah.
one direction. You
Yeah.
have complete control in the
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not one direction down. You can kind of
Yeah.
shift side to side, but you're still
You're not going back
down.
up. Yeah.
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 You're traveling down that vertical axis.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
go back up.
Yeah. So it just doesn't feel. That's the thing. It's because we're trained. We're trained so well, and we practice and practice and practice. It doesn't feel extreme. It could get extreme very quickly.
Yeah. I
You didn't
definitely
know what
want
you
to
were
do the
doing.
course. I don't know if I trust myself enough though. Like, I
Oh,
know
you
my limits.
don't worry. Your instructors will whip you into
Yeah.
shape. Yeah.
You don't know until you try.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. I definitely, it's something I'm going to pursue. I just, as soon as the earliest opportunity. I don't get a whole lot of opportunities just to go do
Yeah.
those things.
2
Busy guy.
weekends.
This is a privilege here tonight. Speaking of, I think it's a pretty good time to end it and go do dad
I got-
responsibilities.
I got a quick question before Daddy Duty kicks
Let's
in.
do it.
You guys mentioned real quickly and super casually the other day that you saw like a giant squid or a giant octopus or something once. Is that something you guys can talk about?
Yeah.
Can you tell me
so
about that thing?
Not in Newfoundland, but in Madrona Point, off of the coast of British Columbia, we saw a giant Pacific octopus. And it was absolutely amazing, as it sounds. They're magnificent creatures. The one we saw, she was probably
18, 20 feet
Yeah.
across.
she was massive.
Wow.
And she,
Kraken.
she was
What?
tucked into this huge crevice, but she had a couple of her arms outstretched, and it was so cool to be so close. Like we were so close, face to face, and that was part of the dive. Like we don't get to see octopus on this side of the Atlantic that close to shore, and that's not something we're seeing regularly scuba diving, and so. It was kind of the mission of this dive. We're like, we're in British Columbia. I really want to see my first GPO, and
Giant Pacific octopus.
Not
We-
General Post Office.
yeah,
Giant Pacific octopus. Yeah, GPO.
and yeah, it was a little spooky. We had to do the water was like calm, like glass, which was lovely. But then we had to do a blue water descent in the summer months in BC. You get this like algae form in the first like I'd say 20 feet. And then as soon as you're below that, the visibility is actually pretty good. But we couldn't see anything below. We see a few seals earlier, and we're like, I don't know what's down there. Here's a mooring line. We're going to follow it down. We've never been to this dive site. We had gone to a dive shop, and they'd given us some instructions. And it was kind of like a treasure hunt, which was cool.
Oh,
And
so they knew it was there, and you kind of just like, oh, we could put
Well,
that.
there's several. Like
Yeah, okay.
this one like rock outcrop is just basically it's like a good spot. Like you're almost
Right.
guaranteed to
Okay.
see a giant Pacific octopus.
Yeah.
So
'Cause-
the guy there at the shop had been like, he was there once, and he's like, yeah, after I saw 8, I stopped counting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not at once.
Not together, but like
Oh, I
throughout the
was gonna
dive,
say,
like
I
as he
don't-
was like
What's
swimming
the
along. but
plural noun of octopi?
I think you just nailed it.
No,
it's
yeah,
octopuses
but like,
actually,
Oh.
because
Octopuses.
it's not based off of a Latin name. So if it was Latin, it'd be octopi, but it's not. It is
Sorry,
octopuses.
I misspoke. I didn't mean plural noun. I meant like a business of ferrets, a murder of crows, whatever
Oh.
that one is.
Oh,
Oh, a group of octopuses.
I don't know.
I don't know.
We only saw one, so I didn't think to.
Yeah.
Octopod.
Octopod.
A pod of octopuses.
But yeah, that was one of the coolest things we saw. So when we finally found it, because what you look for, they call them octopus gardens. So you basically look around in the cracks and crevices, and if you see a bunch of shells that have been discarded
Okay.
in front of this crack or crevice, there's
Right.
a really good chance there was an octopus there at some point, and you're hoping that it's there now.
And we had a light with us, and so every little crack, we saw a bunch of octopus gardens, like a ton of discarded shells. And we're like, oh, maybe this is the one, maybe this is the one. And so everyone, we just didn't know which one it was going to
No.
be. And Tanner was the one who found it.
Yeah,
So I'll
it's
give
like,
you that.
I saw it, and then it was so cool to like flash, finally find it, and it's looking at you, you're looking at it. It's changing color in real time. Like you can see the pores.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
And changing texture too, or no?
Yeah, we had like
Yeah.
slight changes in texture.
She got really prickly and then kind
all
of
in
like
real
smoothed
time.
out again.
Can you imagine if you ran into that thing just ever had an argument with an eel or something, and you shine a light on it, he's like, give me that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can grab you. Like they're
No
not
doubt, no doubt. They're
not
good at eating
dangerous, not dangerous at all. But they're very curious.
They're very
and-
cautious of humans, though,
Yeah.
too. Like I have friends who live in BC and dive and see octopus like frequently, but there's like they'll go back to the same spots and see the same octopus in the same dens, and it's like 7 dives in before this octopus will like come out and like trust them enough to like start like maybe like putting their tentacles on their arms and
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah, I
And
wouldn't want that.
I mean,
I
if
don't
you've
want to cuddle.
if you've
these
seen
things.
My Octopus Teacher, that's an incredible
Oh,
yeah.
documentary style
Yeah, it was,
Amazing.
series.
yeah.
That's
That changed
really
my
cool.
life.
Yeah.
Heard it was good. Haven't watched it.
I highly recommend.
Yeah,
Little plug for that, but
Mm.
yeah. But
Cool.
that was the highlight. That was amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. To see
It
something
was
that
really
big.
cool because the week before we'd been in Seattle and seen another giant Pacific octopus in the aquarium there, and obviously really cool to see close up and like right on the glass, like seeing all the suction cups. But then, yeah, and the like aquariums are great tools for education, but there's something completely different about seeing it in the wild. Like
For
this is its
sure.
natural habitat. This is where it lives. This is where it
Mhm.
eats and breathes and reproduces,
Mhm.
and just being able to be a part of that ecosystem with it was so cool.
I did not ever think about this. How do octopus copulate?
I kind of know this. If,
Yeah, go ahead.
so basically, they have kind of inside their mantles. So it almost looks like they're hugging each other. So they'll
Beak to beak, so to speak?
beak to beak, basically. They'll kind of come together, and yeah, one of them's flushing sperm into the body cavity of the other one. But it's really cool because they can also store sperm from different sperm donors and decide which one they're going to use
Right,
and
I
store
do
it for a long
remember
time.
that.
Sperm
Yeah.
allocation,
Yeah, sperm allocation, so they can be picky and
Mm.
so
And-
they can copulate and then be like, you know what, that wasn't the best. I'm not going to use you for my
No.
kids.
Oh.
Yeah.
This isn't good stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the
wish
one
I
thing.
had that 35 seconds back.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I regret this choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the females die like the very end of their life cycle is when they reproduce, have their offspring, and then
Mhm.
they die right afterwards.
Oh wow.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, they guard the eggs until they die. They stop
Yeah.
eating, and then they die.
Yeah,
Wow.
the cycle of life.
Cycle of
Wow,
life.
it's beautiful. Speaking to the something in an aquarium versus something in real life. Remember that wolffish that was at the Bombay Marine Station back in 2014? They captured that. That was a
Yes.
beast. That thing was angry.
That's the reason I don't want to dive for scallops.
Yeah, I used to go in there all the time, just look at them and be like, "Nah, I'm not diving." Like I never didn't like swimming in the ocean, and I think that like deterred me for years.
To be fair, though, healthy respect, like wolffish have massive teeth. Like I would not get close to its mouth in any slightest form. But during the day, they're almost exclusively in their dens. Like you
Mhm.
wouldn't, like today where we're out in this like open sand bed, like there's no wolffish there.
Yeah,
Like where
yeah.
you could dive down and
Sure.
no one's just gonna come out of the corner of your eye and like snatch your
No.
arm off and be like, that's my scalp.
When my old man went to his open water, he went to reach for a scallop, and his dive instructor tapped him on the shoulder and pointed. He's like, "There's a wolffish there by Jeff." Well, he didn't say that they were underwater, but I pointed it out, and he was like, "Not that one, buddy. You'll lose your hand." I was like,
I was gonna say, one of the scariest, not scary, but like humbling, kind of like made my skin crawl just a tiny bit. Super exciting was the same dive where we saw that massive jellyfish. We actually saw a wolffish out of its den for the first time, and it was the biggest wolffish we've ever seen. Head on it, probably.
It was
Maybe.
still sort of in a den.
Well, yeah, it was in basically.
if he's big enough that you can see him swimming and still
But
sort
they
of be
don't-
in the den,
They don't
was
like they wouldn't like come out after you or anything. They're not
Well, they
gonna be
would if you
predators.
like
Would
got
they?
close enough to them and they felt threatened. So,
Yeah.
like they're very territorial and but basically just
Okay.
want to be left alone. So all the other wolffish we'd ever seen were tucked into a hole in the ground basically, and all you can see is the head. The head's poking out. But this is the first time we got to see like most of the body.
So how many
But it was still
wolffish
in-
how often do you see them?
It was still in a cave.
They frequent the same little spots. So like there are spots that we know to dive that there's like a 50, 60.
that's Kenny's
maybe.
crack by watch your fingers.
Basically, yeah.
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 Wild.
Yeah. No, you're right. It was still like it basically had its back to this kind of
Mhm.
crevice that was there, but it was one of those because there's a little hole that you could see the back of the crevice, and we saw its tail first.
Mm-hmm.
We had like looked
It was really big.
kind of like the back door and was like, oh, okay. And then we went around the front and could see the opening, and it was just sitting there, and it was like, oh, there's a lot more out in the open than the other ones we had seen, and it made me very cautious. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, we're
I'm
gonna
not getting
stay.
close to
We're gonna
that
stay
mouth,
way
yeah.
back here. We're not going anywhere near
We'll
this
appreciate
thing.
you from
Mhm.
afar.
Yeah, but just seeing like his head was probably bigger than yours. Like,
Yikes.
I got a pretty big head.
You
yeah,
do.
yeah. But yeah, very humbling, exciting,
Yeah.
humbling.
Gnarly. Okie dokie.
Cool.
Satisfied.
thanks for having us.
Thank
Yeah.
you for indulging
Thanks,
me.
Rob.
Thanks for the inclusion, boys.
Yeah.
Super sweet.
Thanks for the questions, Liam.
Yes, no problem.
Cool.
Thanks for the knowledge.
Maybe we'll try to infuse this with some pictures and videos and stuff of the
There's a
day.
couple took.
Yeah. Cool. Deadly.
Sweet.
Right on.
Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Peace, love, and chicken
Good night.
grease.
I love that.
Peace, love, and chicken grease. Chicken grease, highly underrated cooking oil.
Get this, quick story. So the last time, because I get out and I piss, I had to close the door piss, took my wetsuit, get it all off, started pissing, snorkel fell off, right into my stream of piss, right into the mouthpiece. Yeah. And I was like, alright, so I'm going to